Welcome to a new season of Veterans in Transition, where we promote the veteran community. Each week, we travel around the region highlighting veteran-related news, issues, and events. October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Around the region, various organizations are hosting walks, runs, bowling activities, all in an effort to raise funds for cancer research and for patient treatment. In this episode of Veterans in Transition, we celebrate and give voice to 3 women veterans who are strivers, thrivers, advocates, and champions of breast and ovarian cancer as we celebrate battles won fighting this disease.
Some years ago, through medical doubt, I met someone I heard lots about. I never thought our paths would cross. Our meeting left me at a loss. I'd had no contact with this guy. He picked me out. I wonder why. He's very sneaky. He changes disguise. I've made small payments toward his demise, but he moves about with sadistic glee, and now he takes revenge on me. He's never redundant nor on the dole. He violates your inner soul. He's sometimes slow and sometimes swift, but the net results is Satan's gift. What can I do now? He's moved in. He's hurting now, my next of kin. He's no compassion, no fear, no shame. It's no surprise. Cancer's his name. Worldwide, great efforts attack this thing, and wondrous improvements this will bring. They'll drain his strength, give him the sack. Once beaten, he'll have no way back. It may be too late for you or me, but we'll fight our corner as best can be, with help from family and friends, with medical treatment and new trends. We'll do our best through smooth and rough to stay real positive, hang in tough. And maybe before our final breath, we may rejoice at cancer's death. I'm Donna. That's a poem by John Kehoe, When a Stranger Comes to Call. I was diagnosed with invasive ductal carcinoma. It was a 16 millimeter tumor, but I also had ductal carcinoma in situ. Lord have mercy, right? So I had the kind that goes through your body and it kind of stays still, basically, is what it boils down to. And it was missed a few times on the mammogram. So it's important to know your body. So I appreciate Rodney inviting me over to tell a little story. But he also wanted the military side because this is a program for veterans. My military background is I entered the Marine Corps 1 year after graduating high school. Born and raised in New Jersey, had no idea what I was getting myself into. I went to boot camp with suits and high heels, and they told me I was going, it was like a conference, so that was what I prepared for. Well, as you can tell, it was not quite that, but it did prove interesting. I made it through boot camp. I spent my first 4 years in Okinawa, Japan. It was a readjustment time for me. My life was headed in a new direction, and it turned out to be a good direction. While there, I received meritorious promotions to corporal and sergeant. I was NCO of the month, NCO of the quarter, NCO of the year there on Okinawa. I left Okinawa, a licensed minister, married to a preacher. Life isn't always a bed of roses. We think the road with God is full of roses, but sometimes there are thorns. Anyway, I came back to the States. I spent most of my time in this area. I was stationed at Headquarters Marine Corps, which at that time was in Arlington, Virginia. I left there and I went to Andrews Air Force Base, and then I was transferred to Anacostia Naval Station, which is right here in the city, the other side of Bowling. After doing 8 years in the Marine Corps, because I was divorced, I decided to leave regular active duty and became what was known as a full-time support reservist. That's how I ended up at Anacostia Naval Station. I left there and went up to Pennsylvania, and then I went down to Atlanta, Marietta, Georgia, and then my final tour was back here. I came back to Headquarters Marine Corps again. This time it's not in Arlington, Virginia. They've moved it to Quantico. So I did my last 6 years in the Marine Corps in Quantico with the career management team, being an advisor to the reserve, the enlisted reserve, on how to get promoted, how to improve their chances of being promoted, solving the problems that they had with being educated, or the Montgomery GI Bill, and answering congressional responses for things related to the enlisted reserve. So that was my tour in the Marine Corps. When I left the Marines, my transition to the civilian world was pretty easy. I became a contractor by choice. I did not try to join the government at that time. I joined a company called CSC, Computer Sciences Corporation, as a logistics manager. I did 3 years there. Then I joined a company called Pacific Architects and Engineers. I started out there as a logistics manager and went on to be a quality control officer. So it was a great success. I'm currently unemployed. Anyone looking for a logistics manager or quality officer, I'm your gal. See me after this program is over. One thing that the Marine Corps did teach me that made going through cancer easy is there's no such thing as failure. There's no, you can do anything. With the help of God and the belief and confidence that you are more than a conqueror. I'm going to close with another short poem, just because it can break you. It can take you places you don't want to go. It can hit you and kick you with every heavy blow. It can rock you and shock you with its mighty fist. It can stop you and drop you into a dark abyss. It can reset you, then let you drown alone. It can thump you and dump you like a stone. It can strangle you and dangle you over a cliff. It can make the supple buckle and become stiff. It can whirl you and twirl you around its little finger. It can enter right, left, center, and linger. It can take its ace to find a resting place so sweet. It can defeat you and eat you until it is replete. It can be spiteful and frightful any time of day. It can harass you, then cast you away. It can make you grumble and keep you humble. It can make you cry and say goodbye, but never really leave you. It can be deleted. It can be defeated. It can.
I joined the military kind of late. I was 25 when I joined. I went to Fort Sill, Oklahoma for basic training, Fort Gordon, Georgia for my school of AIT. After AIT, I got my orders to go to Wiesbaden, Germany. I was over there for a year and a half. At the time, I was stationed with 5th Corps. My unit at the time was getting ready to deploy to Afghanistan. During that time frame, it was during the summer, I was in my barracks room. I had felt some pain in my chest, and I did a self-exam, and I had felt a knot in my right breast. I made a woman's wellness appointment, and I went to a doctor. The first doctor that I seen was a male. When I went into the appointment, I told him, I was like, I think I have breast cancer. When he did the exam, he was like, "You're too young." I was 27 at the time. He was like, "You're too young. It's probably just a fibroid cyst." I was like, okay. So a few months went by. I felt some changes. It got harder, and something wasn't just sitting right in my stomach. So I made another appointment, and this time I had a woman doctor. And I went in, I told her about my first experience with my first doctor, and she was like, "I don't understand why he didn't do any type of other test or anything." So she put in an order for me to get an ultrasound. At the time, since Wiesbaden was like a small base, we didn't have a large hospital. So I had to go about 45 minutes to an hour away to Landstuhl. I had to go when I went up there the first time, I went with one of my soldiers for some support because I didn't have family over there at the time. They did the test. They seen that I had a lump. The first test was the ultrasound. They seen that I had a lump in the ultrasound. After that, they was like, okay, let's do a mammogram. They did a mammogram. They saw it. Next up was a biopsy. I was diagnosed December 5th of 2012. It was stage 2B. I was very devastated. During that time, I was like, I didn't know that I thought I did something wrong. I felt like ashamed, embarrassed. But my unit at the time, they were very good because I was diagnosed December 5th. December 13th, I was back stateside in Maryland, and I was at the Walter Reed, the naval base in Bethesda, and they came up with a very aggressive treatment plan. One, for me being so young, and so my treatment consisted of I had a bilateral mastectomy. After that, I went through 16 weeks of chemotherapy, Herceptin, Cytoxin treatment. It was a rough time. I would have to go home. I stayed on site. I was very fortunate while I was there because when I was there, I was surrounded by wounded warriors. So I was just grateful for God because I couldn't imagine having any limbs. So I felt for those soldiers. So I went through chemotherapy, radiation treatment, reconstruction surgery. They gave me the option to come off active duty after I went through all my treatment. I was like, no, I still want to serve. So I returned back to do active duty of March of 2014. I served a few years at Fort Belvoir, the Corps Engineers. After that, I decided, I was like, okay, I wanted to do my passion. So right now, I had got out of November 2017, and I decided to become a personal trainer. Currently, I'm a personal trainer at One Life Fitness in Arlington, Virginia. My way of giving back is to help promote fitness and encouraging people to take care of their bodies, because your bodies, you only get one. My words of encouragement would be, listen to your self-instinct. It will never steer you wrong. All right, thank you.
I was already 23 years in my military career as a physicist, where I specialized in electro-optics and lasers. I worked in missile defense, launched satellites, chemical, biological, nuclear defense, and NATO operations. And I was a colonel at the time when I thought life was great. But on the day that I assumed command of the Joint Program Office for Biological Defense, that's when I realized something was not quite right. Because you see, after I had given my acceptance speech, took command about 3/4 of the way through my reception as I'm greeting the several hundred guests who show up. I realize there's pain, and it's radiating from my pelvis all the way up to my right shoulder. The next thing I know, I hear the sirens, and I'm in a hospital, and my body is convulsing involuntarily from the pain. So the doctors put me immediately on a morphine IV, and I was just really shocked because it did nothing to relieve the pain. In time, they would tell me that I had ovarian cancer. And when I realized that morphine did nothing to relieve the pain, that's when I thought back to my mother's father, who was a traditional Chinese medicine herbalist. And I grew up experiencing the ability to heal from ailments without any side effects using his herbs. So that all came back to me. And when I saw how sick I was getting, not from what I originally had, but from all the medications they were giving me, I said, you know what, just take this out. Take out this IV. I had to sign waivers. And I decided from that moment that I was going to completely change my diet from the standard American diet to the organic raw vegan diet. And when I did that, within 3 months, my elevated tumor marker actually dropped back to normal, and the tumor, which was in my left ovary, it actually began to shrink. And so I thought, well, everything's great. And I went back to working my normal 16 to 18-hour days in the Air Force. I went TDY overseas where I could not maintain that diet and regimen. And by the time I came back to the US, all that good progress that I had made where the tumor was actually dying from the inside out, it had totally reversed. And it spread, so I was told that I had peritoneal carcinoma in addition to the ovarian cancer, and then it moved into my lungs. It collapsed both of my lungs where they filled with fluid, and at that point, doctors lost hope for my survival, and they put me into hospice. I was on oxygen. Now, nothing can really prepare you for that. At the time, I was about 45, 46 years old, and it really was a very challenging moment. But what happened one day is about a month or so after I'm in hospice, one day my blood pressure just tanks, and it gets so low that all the muscles in my body begin to contract, and I just felt like it was going to be the end. And I screamed for help. I realized that if I continued to go down this path, I won't be here much longer, because I had already gone for about 40 days without being able to eat any food because my stomach and left lung was shifted further to the left from the aggressive growth of the tumor. And I was gasping for air, so I knew it was only a matter of time before things would shut down. But I called out for help, and I just wanted the doctors to do some last-ditch effort to try to save my life. And so at that point in time, my cousin called the ambulance. They came, and they brought me in, and I begged them to take out the fluid because there was all this fluid accumulating in my body. I was literally gaining 10 pounds of fluid in one day. And what's ironic is that, as I'm gaining all this fluid, I'm also losing a lot of blood. And my blood levels were so critically low that I had to have 5 blood transfusions. And they wanted me to do chemo. Now, after I had worked in the military, just with chemical warfare, I kind of knew the history of the chemotherapy program, and so I prayed and I asked God. I said, God, if you want me to do the chemo, I will do it, but you need to tell me directly, because just as a scientist, I just knew it would damage my body, my immune system. And what I heard back was, after they had drawn all that fluid out of me, God told me to ask for the cytology report. Now, mind you, back then, I did not even know what a cytology report was. The doctor said no to me. He said, it's going to be 100% malignant. You need to do it. If you don't, you have 4 weeks left to live. You're going to die. But I pushed back, and I just said, "Doc, can you just please humor me as a scientist? I just want to put my eyes on that report. Once I do, I'll make the decision regarding chemo." So he finally agreed. It took 2 days. They came back to me and they said, "You know what? It's a good thing you waited for this because the fluid tested negative for cancer cells." Now, that was a shock to the doctors. It was a shock to me. But that's what opened up the opportunity for me to then have surgery. And so, I went and I had surgery. I was extremely weak by that time because there was fluid around my heart. They thought I was having congenital heart failure. And then they prepped me. They said, we're going to fully intubate you. You're going to be in ICU when you come through. Don't be alarmed. I got through all that, and I took months to rehabilitate from my condition. And I stand here before you mainly to just share what I learned from the military that I thought was helpful for me was the ability to confront your fears. And you don't wallow in them, but you allow it, you feel it, but then you have to decide to move on. And so once I got through the fear, I put on my research hat because I wanted to understand what's cancer. And what I found out was, cancer cells, they are by themselves. They're not part of the rest of your body. They don't communicate, they don't support the mission of the rest of the tissues and organs in your body. And so metaphorically, what I found was that was really a representation of my life. I had, done well in my career, but I lost touch with who I was on the inside. And so some of what I learned was not only did I have to change my diet, but I had to change my emotions. And then I also, from the military, I drew discipline. They really kind of drill that in you when you go through, I went through the U.S. Air Force Academy and through basic training, but I kind of kept that with me. Because once you decide on the approach you want to take to heal, and I decided to heal naturally, I never took chemo or radiation, you have to have the discipline to really stay the course. Because sometimes when you're doing something that's not, is not conventional, it may take longer time. Conventional medicine is excellent for a crisis, for accident, but for something that's chronic, having the ability to, select a healing modality that will support the innate, wisdom that's already designed in there by God can really work wonders. And that was what I found in my own body. I was kind of looking at it as an experiment in a way. But, and so, as I look at the lessons that I learned from this also, I learned that I had to let go of my career, my job. I was still trying to work. I was not really accepting the fact that I was really sick. And it's in letting go that allowed me to really focus on really healing and what was going on inside of me. The second thing that I learned was letting go of paradigms. We learn certain ways of thinking based on what our parents might teach us or what we learn in school or church, and it's all good stuff. But sometimes when you're really confronted with a serious challenge that's even life-threatening, you may not be able to see the true solution to what you're going through unless you kind of think out of the box. And so I realized that I had to just let go of my desire to heal completely naturally, and that I would actually need to integrate medical care into it as well. So I had surgery, but I also changed my diet. And then the final thing that I let go of was control and attachments. For me to have peace, to be able to go through surgery, I thought I was going to die. And I knew that having fear would be counterproductive to it. And so the only way I was able to really let go of that fear was just to realize that we truly are spirits having a human experience, and that God is the one who is going to walk me through the valley of the shadow of death. And so as I leave you, I just want to say that no matter what kind of challenge you may face, to always carry that faith with you, because faith is what gives you the hope to hope against all odds. And you can just carry that with you and never lose hope.
If you would like to hear more stories of veterans battling cancer who have become strivers, thrivers, and advocates of various forms of cancer, go to our website at vetsinTransition.com. That's all for this edition. We ask that you like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter and Instagram. And remember, we all have a story to tell.